Greetings fellow man, Red Pill Germany again. Today I want to do a follow-up video on my last video where I picked Japan as an example of a foreign country where some Western men look for girlfriends or wives because they do think that the grass on the other side is greener and a foreign NAWALT would be the solution for their problems with the rotten, bad Western women. Now I want to talk about what happens to those men and how these marriages end up when they finally get married to their lovely Japanese wives in Japan. I want to base my discussion on an article that I read back in 2011, and in fact this article was the first piece of red pill that I ingested when I didn't even know that it was actually the red pill. The article is of course linked in the description below, and it is from a website called Japan Stippy, a website for Gaijin by Gaijin, and it is about life in Japan, discussed from a foreign perspective. One paragraph reads as follows: when interacting with others, sex and everything surrounding it is fair game for a topic of conversation in Japan, and it is certainly not frowned upon by religious groups or society at large, as it is in the USA or other countries. When it comes to secreting sexual hormones and sexuality in general, almost nothing is taboo in Japan, until that is the day one gets married, or so it seems. Indeed, in stark sexual contrast, Japan may be suffering from a sexual drought, where being totally open about sex and being sexy in general doesn't seem to be converted into the ins and outs of baby making when it comes to married couples. The article then quotes a survey according to which the average Japanese has intercourse 45 times a year. Compare that to the global average of 103. It goes on to say that the term sexless was first used in Japan in the early 1990s, but now is instantly recognizable to the Japanese as a universally understood concept and widely discussed in the media. There are books on the subjects and thousands of websites and heartbreaking blogs discussing sexless Japan, while letters on the subject fill agony columns on Dear Doctor type sites. The article then goes on speculating about the possible reasons for this low sex rate in Japanese marriages: stress of work life in Japan, lack of understanding and usage of contraception, especially the pill, abundance of hurin or extramarital relationships, more and more Japanese women choosing career over family, and lastly, a tendency among Japanese married couples to feel an aversion to sex with their spouse, not because they dislike one another, but rather because they feel that they have more of a sister-brother relationship, the sanctity of which would be destroyed with the repulsive incest-like feeling by what Westerners would consider normal conjugal relationships. So one has to understand that Japan is a strange country in that sense, that it is a very modern or postmodern society that still has strong traditional influences, and to the outside observer or visitor, the areas in which Japanese people behave very traditional and where they behave modern or even Western appear to be, let's say, randomly distributed, and it cannot always be predicted when a Japanese acts modern or traditional. So this article is not about the great escape artists of Japan, women who try to look for a foreigner in order to follow him to the foreign country, to the West, because they just hate life in Japan. This article is about the women who married a Westerner and stayed in Japan with him. So I guess these women, they still want to stay close to their family, they want to still stay in Japan, but they want to break out of the strict system of Japanese traditionalism, and they think they can get around all their duties and obligations when they just marry a Western man who is said to be helping out in the kitchen and who is kind of a softy 90s pushover guy. At least that's what the image seems to be. So let's jump right into the comments under the article. And there are over 1,000 sometimes really lengthy comments where people just pour their hearts out and where they tell their depressing and all too familiar story about their girlfriends and later to be wives in Japan. One of the posters says, for example, I was married to a Japanese woman for 13 years, and this is my honest experience and advice. First, your Japanese fiancé will have plenty of sex with you before marriage. Once you are married, that will stop, since she has what she wants. Second, when your Japanese wife has her first child, she will sleep with the child, not you. Your sex life is over until she wants to have kid number 2 or wants something, like a car. I should note here that sleeping with the child is not referring to pedophilia, more like the Japanese custom of sleeping in one room with their kid or sharing a futon on the floor. Okay, moving on. My advice: if you are a non-Japanese man and would like to have sex at least once a week, do not marry a Japanese woman. Here is an experiment. Do not ask your Japanese girlfriend, fiancé, wife for sex. See how long before she asks you. I did this a few times, and usually after a few weeks she would say, "Hey, don't you feel like having sex?" Never I feel like having sex. You were warned. I just wish someone had warned me. Another commenter adds, seems to be a pattern emerging here. Just the same story here too. Once we had kids, then all of the passion ground to a halt. 100% of the attention is to herself and the children. I don't want all the attention, but a proportionate amount is necessary for a healthy relationship. Never, or very rarely, wants to initiate sex with me, and no longer responds to my advances. Excuses, too tired, not now, Japanese are conservative, although took the initiative of purchasing such toys to do it yourself, and makes no secret of it, even asking me to assist sometimes. This is shocking for me, but does not want to touch me. Spends up big on the beauty with facials, etc. But that is normal for J-girls, and I don't mind her looking good. Like Marvin, my wife also has her sights set on breast implants, A to C cup, and has been seeing various cosmetic surgery centers for the past 2 months, checking out her options. She seems a little worried about what people around her would think, mainly family and friends, so has been wearing seriously padded bras since she stopped breastfeeding 8 months ago in order to make the transition seamless. I think that this is an unnecessary step, and I tried to talk her out of it. My wife won't admit that there is a problem, and at the moment I just don't know what to do about it, or how to set things right. Anru then comments, the necrophilia factor, or maguro, meaning dead tuna, with Japanese women is so common. My wife says it's the man's role to do all the work. All she should have to do is lie there. That is such a big turn-off for me, and I have lost interest for precisely that reason. The last time we had sex was 5th of April 2009, and I had to do everything. About 2 months ago, I thought I should initiate again, and she just lay there, and I gave up after 10 minutes of giving foreplay and getting nothing in return. I couldn't even get an erection. I was stone cold. She commented afterwards that I was too old and shouldn't worry too much about sex anymore. Yes, I thought, certainly not with you. So then there was actually, of course, a PUA kind of guy arriving on the scene, giving all sorts of advice on what the proper technique is to go down on your woman and you have to satisfy her in bed. And then others added that maybe they should help more in the household because the woman is just too stressed out to feel sexy, and they should do the dishes more often and do the housework. Of course, this also doesn't help. There are reports of men who tried to do exactly that for 5 years, and the women lost more and more respect for them when they begged for sex each and every day and did all the housework for them. These Japanese women actually are pretty clever because they got exactly what they want. They got not only a wage slave, they got a house slave as well. So you see, these women are not really bound on monkey branching to another man. They are just very content to have their beta male provider, and they don't even have to put out. They instead spend all the man's money together with their friends in fancy restaurants, shopping in the shopping districts of Japanese towns. Another man then adds to say that the end game of his now very fat wife was to become a grandmother, because in Japanese culture the grandmother is actually well respected and she doesn't have to do any of the housework. She can do whatever she says and she has way more freedom. And I think this is an underlying theme here. Women want more freedom in Japanese society because in traditional Japanese marriage they actually have the role of a servant and they have to be submissive, and with most Japanese wives they couldn't get away with all that shit. But Japanese women are no different than Western women. They want just the same thing, and they just want to be in a situation where they can get away with their destructive and narcissistic ways. So they don't want a Japanese man who wouldn't put up with that stuff. They want to break out of their role as the housewife and servant, so they pick a weak mangina Western male whose answer to having sex withheld from him is to do more dishes and to look after the children more and to improve his cunnilingus technique. That is so hysterical, but well, I should really not make too much fun about these guys because, I mean, they were poor blue pill men who just didn't know any better, and they were fed all this 90s softies crap by their mothers or by the Western media, and they were really not prepared for what was coming for them. In addition, most of them have children and they love their children dearly and they want to keep the children in their lives, so they have to get the marriage going, and this is one of the big dangers. There was also one article being linked and quoted in the comment section where the author of course thought that communication is the goal here and then communication can solve all the problems. However, communication never solves any problems when the problem is actually just different interests, and when one party already has what it wants and the other party has no leverage to negotiate. So the writer says, these magical two parts they talk about is rubbish. Part 1, you need to communicate with your Japanese lover early in the relationship before you get married so that you both understand how important sex should be to each other. Set expectations early so that there are no surprises or disappointments. It does not matter if you talk about it or not. The fact is, women have already calculated the risks and truly expect the men to do nothing less than a normal J-man would do. Golf, drink, other women, etc. The Japanese do not have a Western view of marriage. It's not something you can talk about to make them change their expectations that have been ingrained in culturally with a conversation or two. Part 2. You need to help your Japanese woman understand how sexual pleasure can be a healing and relaxing part of a relationship. If you help your woman understand how good sex can be for her, she is more likely to keep you satisfied as well. This is false hope. This won't even work on American women. Been there, done that. Dream on. The author of the article has no idea how the culture works and how difficult or impossible it is to change that very person you are. In Japan, culture runs deep into the actions and way of living. It's not as superficial as it is in America to Americans. So there is actually much more hysterical stuff in there. The comments really range from 2006 to 2014, I think, and people really come back and comment and give updates on how their marriages worked. And if you are, like me, interested in these anecdotes and these personal stories of people, like look at them like one little stone in a gigantic mosaic, you will maybe find this very interesting. So I read through that in a week, and after that I thought, damn. And it was actually very interesting because some people wrote then, dude, all this stuff you write about and bitch about Japanese women, this has nothing to do with Japanese women. This is women in general. And I actually thought, yeah, that is true. A lot of the married couples I see here in the West, I mean, they're basically the same. Just that people don't really walk into this trap where they are the exotic looking guy on a foreign exotic island, and they all of a sudden are in this apparent candy store of all these hot little women, and they can have them all. And of course, they are snatched then by one of these women who just want to be on Easy Street. And that is basically what's going on here. So you see here in Japan female nature at work, not as out of control monkey branching like in the West, but very cold and very calculating, trapping the man, giving him all the sex, being the cute, submissive, hot, sexy girlfriend, and then the cage comes falling down, and the 180-degree turn after marriage, or at least after the first child. And then just a life of leisure and spending money. So I hope this was interesting and or entertaining for you, and I hope to catch you guys soon again. Leave some comments below of what you think about that, and have a great day. Servus, Kameraden.